Hi everyone, my name is Ryan and I'm a Rengar one trick on the US server. I've played Rengar since season 8, where I've been challenger ever since. Last season I ended up hitting rank 3, which is my peak. And in my guide I'll cover all about Rengar's combos, his strength, his weaknesses, because there's a lot of fucking weaknesses in Rengar, tips and tricks in general about the champ, and yeah, basically all you need to know to climb. So without story more, I'll jump straight into the guide. So, why will you play Rengar in the first place? Well, Rengar's a very strong duelist with the potential to beat almost every champ in the game. He's insanely fun to play when mastered, but don't underestimate how much time it actually takes to master the champ since he has a very unique design compared to other assassins. Rengar has basically no disengage, like set ult could actually be a very good engage tool, and then he can also just press ult to get out again. The same for Echo and so on. Rengar just excels at engaging and getting raw damage out in time. As much as Rengar's strength lies in the early game and mid game, he has a very hard time to actually complete his snowball to full extent. An enemy team buys defensive items such as Sonya's Crown, Rendon, Omen, and defensive item in general. Therefore it's very important to get ahead in the early game since that's where your strength lies, and getting the early lead will allow you to snowball extremely hard before enemy team gets those defensive items. And when they do end up completing them, it basically doesn't matter because you're so fed. But yeah, before going into Rengar's strength and weaknesses, I just quickly like to point out that as much as I love playing Rengar as an assassin, playing Bruiser or even tank in some games is probably what's gonna give you the extra edge on the enemy team and gonna end up giving you LP in the end. Assassin is, for example, not gonna be playable into enemy team with Sejuani top, Zac jungle, Aurelia mid, and a Veigar ADC with a Alistar support. In this game, Assassin is just completely useless, and I'd recommend playing Bruiser or even tank if your team actually can carry the game and you just end up being a frontline for your team. Rengar is actually very good at being a Bruiser, especially with his W cooldown. Bruiser items like Death Dance, Maw, Spirit Visage, Gorge Ringer and so on is gonna give him a lot of ability haste and defensive stats, so that you can basically end up surviving and then still dealing a lot of damage, since that's what Rengar's kit is enabling him to do, despite buying defensive items as well. So let's get into Rengar's strengths and weaknesses, and I'll start off with his strengths. Rengar is a very hard-hitting single-target assassin, and the fact that he's a single-target assassin is very important to understand because this means that he actually doesn't want to teamfight a lot. He doesn't really have any AoE form of abilities besides his W, but this ability scales in AP, so this doesn't really matter. And the fact that he's a single-target means that he just prefers to play around side lanes, one-shot towers, invade, or force 1v1 fights against enemy jungler, or if someone can be caught off in side lanes, this is what you want to look for. He has currently gotten the buff that makes his E reveal invisible champions like Qiyana, Kha'Zix, Akali and so on, and this is very important to understand because also the fact that you can reveal with your ult, this allows you to reveal with ult, then jump, hit them with your bowler, then reveal again with your E. This means that you can just completely one-shot invisible targets despite them thinking that they should be safe in invis. This can also be used in teamfights. If you see an Akali preparing to engage on your team, you can just press ult and sit around for a bit, let your team kill the invisible target and then perhaps jump on someone else. Another strength of Rengar's is that he actually has the ability to go a lot of different builds. It's not always Assassin that's the best decision, but I would recommend going Assassin into squishy champs. If the enemy team has bruisers or tanks and so on, I would just recommend going bruiser or even tank yourself. Rengar's main targets when buying Assassin is enchanters, supports and mid laners. When going bruisers, you can just still one-shot squishy champs, but this also allows you to take on healthier champs like Anilawi or Aatrox in the side lane. He's also very strong against other burst champions like Kha'Zix, since his W heals over 50% of the damage he has taken in the last 1.5 seconds. So the more damage he takes, the more he can heal, and this basically also leads me into his weakness. Now let's move on to Rengar's weaknesses. And as mentioned, he's very strong against burst champions, since the healing on his W is based off the damage taken within 1.5 seconds. But this also means that he's very weak into consistent damage champions, since he cannot really get that satisfying W healing off. So basically, playing against any bruiser in the game is very annoying, since they slowly do a lot of damage to you. And this could be Viego, Bel'Veth, Wukong, Olaf. Any champ that just slowly does a lot of damage to you but doesn't really burst you, makes it very hard to get that perfect W off so you can heal a lot. This also makes it hard to decide whether or not you should use empowered Q, W or even E. Also, Rengar is very weak into knock-up champions that deny his jump, and this could be Rek'Sai, Janna, Lulu, Thresh, Poppy. Any champ like this is very annoying to play against, and it almost always is going to be an Edge of Night game if you're playing against this. So, now that we've covered which champs are annoying to play against, let's go over the champs Rengar wants on his team. Rengar wants an engaged support, or engaged mid laner, or even an engaged top laner. Anyone that can set up the team fight perfectly for him is the best champs with Rengar. This can be champs like Rakan, Ornn, Nautilus, Leona, even a Galio mid lane is perfect. Anyone that can set up the fight and go in before you in a fight is very crucial to have in your team. This enables Rengar to also skip Edge of Night, since enemy team will have to focus on your team as well. So this basically enables Rengar to get off a good flank and engage with your team. As mentioned, Rengar doesn't want to be the first in the team fight. Now let's cover Rengar's passive and his abilities. First of all, there's of course the bone tooth stacks from his passive. Basically, this just means that you want to kill each individual enemy champion at least once as fast as you can. This enables you to snowball even harder since it gives 25% bonus AD. It's very crucial to finish it early, because it just allows you to snowball extremely hard. So if I see enemy team going for Drake and I don't have a bone tooth stack on enemy top laner yet, I'll always just focus on getting the top stack first, and then I can fight enemy team afterwards. There's of course two parts of Rengar's passive. There's also his ferocity stacks. So it's very important to keep in mind when playing Rengar that managing his stacks correctly is the difference between a good gank and a bad gank. For example, if I want to ult a lane, I'll always try to prepare for the fight by getting 4 stacks of hitting Scuttle, Drakes, hitting Plant and River, anything that can maintain my stacks. In addition to setting myself up for a mid lane gank, for example, if I run into bushes with 4 stacks and Elise is sitting there, prepared to stun me, then I can always just cleanse the stun and run away without the risk of dying. Next up, there's of course Rengar's basic abilities, and first of all there's his Q, Savagery. This ability can be used as an auto-attack reset, and it gives 40% attack speed on the next 2 auto-attacks. This is very effective to use for jumping, so you can use it to jump back and forth between bushes, to reposition, to make extended jumps like shown in the clip, or just jump between the walls to have fun. Next, there's his W, Battle Roar. This ability does magic damage and it scales quite nice of AP, 80% to be exact, which is why building AP sometimes can be fun, which I've actually done a couple of times in Challenger, and actually won some of the games. Furthermore, the ability heals 50% of all damage taken within 1.5 seconds, and to be completely honest, this ability is completely broken, since you can basically use a triple W combo. And then in the video I'll show the triple W combo used in a Challenger game against Arguin, where it shows how broken this ability truly is. Next, there's Rengar's E, Bowler. This ability recently got an insane buff where it gives extra vision on target hits. This reveals Kha'Zix ult, Qiyana W, Talon ult, Akali W, etc. Which is why the ability is so important to hit against those champions, since it allows you to basically one-shot champions, when in theory they should be safe from Rengar's auto attacks. Rengar's E should also be used to jump over walls, to red buff, Crux, Wolves, Blue, Gromp, and it can even be used to jump over the wall to Baron. Lastly, there's Rengar's ult, Thrill of the Hunt. Rengar's ult also got changed slightly, since it reveals not only the main target, but also if someone should be standing right beside the target in a bush. They're shown as well. When Rengar jumps the marked enemy, he shreds armor, giving you that extra burst to one-shot even faster. Rengar's ult can be used in different ways. It's probably the best zoning ability in the game, since if I fed Rengar ults, enemy team usually just groups up together as 5, since they're afraid of leaving the group. This can be used to zone off Drakes, Baron, and even to secure towers or inhibitors, since basically they think you want a team fight, but in reality you just want to scare them off to secure an objective. His ult can also just be used to give vision. Let's say your team is struggling to fight an Akali, you can just stand still, revealing with your ult. This makes her an easy target for your team, and you can also just jump her if you're 100% sure you can land the bowler, since it also gives vision. There's also a little trick with Rengar's ult I thought I should add. So you basically press ult, then you walk up to a target in melee range, and then you auto attack to proc Duskblade slow for example, and then you can auto attack reset with Q, allowing you to jump a second target, or even following the same target if they flash, or use an ability like Kassadin ult or Ezreal to escape. This trick is rarely used, but can be very effective in some scenarios. I should also add the fact that Rengar's ult can be used to bait out abilities like Fizz E, Ezreal E, or even a Sonya's. By simply walking close to an enemy, the moment you're within jump range, they will be able to see you. This almost always makes them scared of it and use their escape abilities to run away. And the moment they use the ability, you can just jump in and secure the kill afterwards. Now for the matchups for Rengar and jungle. There's of course a lot of different junglers in the game, but I'll just briefly cover the ones that are mainly picked or just strong in the mid at the moment. I'd recommend banning Udyr Wukong or even Lee Sin at the moment, since they're very strong and just always hard to play against and they always bite Tarbies. One of the hardest matchups is Kindred because of his ult and his invade potential. Kindred ult is very annoying to play against. If he times it correctly at least, you can never really kill anyone. This basically just negates all your damage and you can't even proc Duskblade to get out. So if you want to play against Kindred correctly, you should always bait his ult out before a fight. You can even bait it out in a 3v3 in bot lane and then invade him later on with your own ult. If you track him correctly, this should always be a free kill. So these next champs just have an annoying ability that cancels your jump, and I'd recommend buying Edge of Night against them if they have another champ like Jen and Lulu. First off is Sejuani, very tanky, her Q is annoying to deal with, and her ult. You can never really melee range Sejuani since he basically just stuns you with auto attacks, and then press E. Wukong ult obviously negates your jump. Vi ult is very hard to play against since it's point and click CC. Poppy W, E and ult of course, Rek'Sai W. Sagas is generally hard to kill and provides a lot of CC. Udyr is, as mentioned, annoying to deal with, he's too tanky and he slows a lot. He can basically just chase you down in your tiny jungle, just slowly killing you. Master Yi's entire kit basically counters Rengar, since he can touch your Q, he can negate your burst with W, and you can't really use your W in a good way since he doesn't really burst, he just does a lot of consistent damage over time. Now for the easier matchups, it's basically any squishy jungler in the game. Nidalee, Evelynn, Taliyah, Kayn, Talon and so on. Talon and other invisible champions like Kha'Zix are very easy to play against since you basically just jump on them and land your bowler, and then it's always a one shot. Nidalee can be annoying if she invades a lot. Evelynn is very easy, just invade level 3 and then there should always be a kill. And now for Taliyah. Taliyah is a very easy matchup. If you have 4 stacks and she presses E, you basically just jump her, cleanse the stun, then she can't hit W, and then you just kill her afterwards. Kayn is very easy early on, but if he gets red Kayn, it's very hard to play against. Every matchup can be very easy if you just have a lot of AP in your team and then force enemy team to buy magic resistance, since you basically just one-shot them anyways. And now for the runes. So as mentioned earlier, you can kind of do whatever you want on Rengar. You can either go Bruiser, Tank, Assassin, whatever you prefer. Mainly I prefer going Assassin, and with Assassin I'll go Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, and Relentless Hunter. In secondary I'll go Boots and Futures Market. You can also go secondary Sorcery, Water Walking, and Absolute Focus, but it's kinda limit test, it's whatever you prefer going. And as mentioned, you can kinda do whatever you want, so you shouldn't set with one single rune set every game. You can kinda choose between different runes every game. Also, First Strike is mainly for the outscaling part. This rune just simply outscales everything. It's insane for late game, whereas Electrocute is better early game. So for First Strike you want to go Boots, Futures Market, and Cosmic Insight. And secondary you'll go Sudden Impact, and Eyeball Collection, or Relentless Hunter. Again, it's down to preference, but I prefer going Relentless Hunter. Now for the Bruiser runes, you can kinda choose between Conqueror or Lethal Tempo, but it's mainly gonna be Conqueror since it just gives more damage, and you instantly proc Conqueror with Rengar. Then you wanna go Triumph, Alacrity, and Coup de Grace. And secondary, you'll go Boots and Cosmic Insight. Then lastly, we have Fleet. Fleet is probably the most consistent route for Rengar since it keeps him full HP during clear without the need to buy a potion. Fleet also enables better early skirmishes and outplay potential with the movement speed and small healing you get from it. With Fleet, you can either go Assassin, Bruiser, or even Tank. With Assassin, I'll go Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, then secondary, I'll go Boots and Futures Market. With Bruiser and Tank, you can go Overheal, Alacrity, and Last Stand. Then secondary, you can either choose to go Inspiration with Boots and Cosmic Insight, or Boots and Futures Market. You can also go Resolve secondary, and then I'd go Revitalize and Conditioning. And now for the different build paths for Rengar. First off, the core items I almost always go for, and this is Duskblade, Essence Reaver, Lord Dominik's, and then Infinity Edge. You can also go Lord Dominik second instead of Essence Reaver if they have Sejuani and Ornn that are just heavy stacking armor and that'll build a lot of HP. Mortal Reminder is also an option if they have a lot of healing. And then when the core build is completed, you can go Edge of Night, Serpent's Fang if they have shield, Maw if they have a lot of AP burst, Death Dance for AD burst. Other items could also be Bloodthirster for the healing, it could also be Collector for faster burst, or even Phantom Dancer for burst. Late game you can also buy Guardian Angel if you feel like an important fight is coming up and you die often in the fights. Also, the basic boots on Rengar are just cooldown reduction boots, but you can also go defensive boots if needed, if enemy team has a lot of AD or even AP. Then I would go Tabis or just Mercs. You can also go Eclipse, Black Cleaver, and Lord Dominik's if enemy team has a lot of armor. You can even go for the Bruiser and Tank build, going Gold Rengar, Hydra, Black Cleaver, Death Dance, and then Spirit Visage. Now to cover the different stages of the game. First off, there's of course early game. Since Rengar is strong in early game, you don't want to be power farming for too long. You can look for early fights, like take your red side camps into a gank, or even an invade. Also, early game is all about lane ganking, since Rengar can't really gank from river. Lane ganking is all about sneaking into the bush correctly, without getting spotted. If let's say you have a Rakan support, but you feel like Rakan is gonna miss his W, you can Q, EW, and then stun, making sure Rakan hits his W afterwards. And they should almost always play free kill. Top lane ganks are very optional in my opinion, since I almost always use weak side top lane and play for bot side. Herald is very important. Trading for Drake is 100% worth it, since it allows you to snowball insanely hard. If let's say enemy team is going for play bot side, and I can kill top lane, get a Herald, get the first tower and then the second tower, this is extremely worth for me, and I can just completely 1v9 the game afterwards. Tracking enemy jungler and knowing the matchups is really good, since you can almost always invade enemy jungler if they don't have ult. For example, Kindred. If Kindred doesn't have ult, he's very squishy and you can just completely one-shot. This also counts for Hecarim, since he has no escape without ult. And now for mid game. Rengar is really strong in mid game, especially if you got ahead early on. Rengar is one of the best snowball champs, which means that you always want to keep tempo up. This means that if needed you can skip camps to gank faster. If you for example see jungle on his way to gank bot lane, if you see him on wolves or even Gromp, then you can simply skip your camps and go straight to bot bush and wait for him to show up. Always be active on the map and look around to see if there's a potential play to be made. Never just look at your camps while doing them. Also track enemy jungle the best you can and see if they allow you to invade them. This can be if I know the red buff is spawning and Kindred doesn't have ult for example, I'll just press ult and go in for the red buff. Also, if they don't show up, this just means that they're making a play on the other side of the map. This could be if you're invading his top side and he's not showing up, this means that he's probably going for a dive bot lane. Also, if I see him pathing bot side, and I know Drake is gonna spawn in a bit, then I know to prepare for the bot gank or even a Drake fight. By preparing for a fight, this means that if you want camp of leveling up, but your Raptors, Croc and Red are all up, you can basically just take a red buff and then even press ult to invade him. You can also just lane gank, since basically doing Raptors or even Crocs basically doesn't matter before the fight, so it's just not gonna give you a level up and make you stronger. Ganking in mid game is basically the same as early game, you want to sneak in bushes if the wave allows it. However, you also have the option to press ult now, so mid ganks are way easier. Usually mid ganks only work if enemy mid lane is really bad and walking close to the bushes. And as mentioned earlier, Rengar's passive gives him 25% bonus AD and all bone tooth stacks are collected. Therefore it's important to get the stacks as fast as you can, since this basically just helps you win even more fights and snowball extremely hard. If you're unsure you can win a 3v3 bot side, maybe a Drake fight, then just secure Herald or even dive top lane. You can also just simply invade him by getting all his topside camps and getting all the gold. After going for a few plays like this, you should be able to fight the next Drake, since you've built yourself a good lead from giving up 1 or 2 Drakes. An important thing to notice is that Rengar completely one-shot towers as mentioned, especially when he completes Essence Reaver. And now for late game. Late game is all about playing around summoner spells, especially Exhaust and Flash. Exhaust is really annoying to play against, since you basically just can't one-shot anyone with Exhaust. If it's a Cassiopeia mid lane, or if it's a Seri ADC with a Lulu support perhaps, you'll never one-shot them if they have Exhaust up. Besides that, Rengar's late game is really strong, especially if enemy team doesn't know what they're doing. At 3 and 4 items, you're the strongest, and basically one-shot anyone, even bruisers and tanks if you're fed enough. The fact that Rengar relies on mistakes is very dependent on enemy team. So if you see an enemy slightly overextended, you have to be fast to punish them, since that's how you close games, especially before Drakes and Barons. The higher the elo, the less mistakes enemy team makes, so you should also be careful that they aren't just baiting you into ulting them, and then they have their entire team right behind them. Before a fight is about to occur, like a Dragon fight or Baron fight, it's important to see if you can get a pick. You want to be the first on the objective to set up a flank. So basically you want to get 4 stacks, and then you want to see if you can get a flank off and kill the enemy support or ADC, or even a mid laner. If you see an enemy support walking too far up toward, you can simply one-shot them by sitting in the bush and waiting for them to come. Then that should secure the Drake or even a Baron. It's also important to be aware of when to fight. If you think you and your team aren't strong enough to fight, you can simply push side lane and get towers. Eventually enemy team has to make a decision. Either they have to force a fight really fast, since you're threatening to end the game, or they'll have to send someone to defend the base. If they send the strongest member to fight you and try to kill you even, then you can just press ult and run to the fight. If they send 2 of the weakest members, you can probably still try to fight them and see if you can one-shot them and take down the base. You also have the option to just press ult and rotate to the Baron fight or whatever the objective is. Here in this game, I felt like I had no chance of winning a fight since my team was really weak, and enemy team had a Kindred that just made it hard for me to kill them. So I just decided to go for the push, and it worked out. I just one-shot the entire base completely, and my team couldn't even prevent one from recalling. So Lux still ended up recalling, and I still one-shot the base. This part kind of covers early game, mid game and late game. It's basically just what drakes to consider fighting and what to give. Ocean drakes are probably the most used drake at the moment, so if you see enemy team want to fight an ocean drake, you can basically give it if it's not soul point and just fight topside and see if you can get some gold to fight the next drake. If it's a mountain drake, you probably want to fight it, since this could make the game completely unplayable for you, just not allowing you to one-shot anyone. Infernal drakes are of course the best drake for you. This basically just gives you a ton of AD and makes you one-shot anyone. And now for the different combos. First off, that's the basic combo. Jump from a bush, Q, E, W. Then you have the option to empower Q, empower W for healing, or empower E for the stun. This next combo is basically just stun into a stun. So you start off with 4 stacks again, then you jump, and in mid-air you want to throw your bowler to stun. Then you Q to get a stack, and W. This is very important, so now you can jump, and then you can bowler mid-air twice, slowing and then stunning again. Now for the fastest burst combo, triple Q combo. You start with 4 stacks, you Q, E, Q, W, Q. Make sure to use your W as late as you can to make sure you get the most healing out of it, since I'm assuming enemy team is hitting you while you're doing the combo. And now we have the combo that does the most damage. It's basically the triple Q combo with auto attacks in between every Q. So you start off with the import Q, then you jump, E mid-air, auto attack Q, then you auto attack and W at the same time, and then you want to finish over the import Q. And now just a quick few words to close out the guide. Rengar is a very egotistical champ. You basically want to acquire all the resources you can, forcing the game to be in your hands. If this happens enough, you'll eventually learn how to close out the hard games where it's only you being fed. Mastering the playstyle of Rengar does not come overnight. He's a champ that requires a lot of playtime to master combos and just the playstyle in general, because he's very different from other assassins. Lastly, I'd like to add that being good on Rengar just comes from confidence. If you're not yet confident on Rengar, just pretend you are. Walk into enemy jungler, limit test. Go fight him to learn your limits, learn who you can fight and who you cannot fight against. Also learn what items are hard to play against. You should always pay attention to what enemy team is to support from recall. This could be armor boots, which negate 12% of their damage, or even a Sonya's and Guardian Angel that requires you to jump another target. This could also be a Rendun's Omen, which makes it very hard to one-shot a specific target. Even though I'd say I've mastered the limit testing on Rengar, I still make a lot of mistakes, so don't feel bad if you end up losing a few games because you went for play that you thought would work. This is basically just a learning lesson, and the next time when you're put in the same scenario, you know not to make the same mistake. And yeah, I hope this guide was helpful for you, and that you'll either be inspired to pick up Rengar, or just feel more confident when locking him in champ select. And yeah, that's it for me. Good luck with the climb.